I hate uncertainty, and it turns out I'm not alone. In a talk I once gave on the psychology of creativity, I asked a large audience of television workers to raise their hands if they liked being confused. Now, I asked this because being stuck and facing contradiction are an essential part of the creative process. Of the 2,000 plus present, only a couple raised their hands, and I wasn't too sure how genuine even those two were. And this is a population who are very likely to have a higher than average tolerance of uncertainty. So it's pretty obvious then that we're all hardwired to hate uncertainty. This no doubt has its origins in our ancestral environment where our survival depended on being able to anticipate the natural and social world. Unpredictability would have often had fatal consequences on the African savannah. And one result of this is we're designed to equate uncertainty with threat. So the human mind has evolved in these circumstances, and it's clearly an amazing thing. It was designed to anticipate and predict quickly. And with it, we've learned to master and control the environment really to an extraordinary level, though not always with wise consequences. Now, it does this by using heuristics or shortcuts, and we call them schemas. And these are kinds of patterns we project onto often very little information from our environment. These are our best guesses that enable us to quickly assess and navigate our world. It's a highly efficient way of using brain resources and of acting quickly amidst the constant flux of experience. We can't possibly process everything as we have to be decisive. So these are shortcuts that have been rewarded by natural selection, and they work amazingly well, much of the time. But they do come with systematic errors in the form of biases and overgeneralizations. And these errors are exaggerated by the fact that the world we now live in is in so many significant ways not the kind of world that these shortcuts were designed for. So this is especially so in terms of the safety of our modern world. Generally speaking, we worry much more than we ought to, and we too often engage in biased thinking in order to calm our emotions. So these built-in biases are all about reducing anxiety and threat. For example, we love the feeling of being right, probably more so than just about anything else. And once something's proven predictive in our past, it's mapped onto our opinions of the present, even if there's lots of evidence against it. We simplify the complexity around us by giving meaning to coincidence. For example, routinely mistaking correlation for causation. A famous example is that you can correlate increased ice cream sales and increased homicides. But clearly, the link is not the ice cream, but increases in people being out and about due to warmer weather. We prefer feeling in control over seeking the truth, so we often deny reality, especially to avoid acknowledging loss. We justify or rationalise our behaviours to avoid feelings of regret, and we overgeneralise to reduce the uncertainty of complexity. I'm sure you could add your favourites to this list, and you'd imagine that with this smorgasbord of biases, we'd be in trouble. And in fact, the problem with all of them is that they can take us out of touch with reality, and they do have negative consequences. Now, I view good mental health as basically being in touch with reality, and I believe we suffer when we're out of touch with the real world. So biases and emotional reasoning can lead to all kinds of problems: conflict with others, maladaptive behaviour, internal contradictions and stresses, and overall a pretty precarious balance in life. But fortunately, our mind, in the right circumstances, is also designed to be curious, to be interested in anomalies. There's a positive joy in new insights and new ways to understand the world. In fact, we are the most creative of all species. And the key for this creativity and this openness of mind is if we're feeling relaxed, if we feel safe. Then our curiosity trumps our need for certainty. Then our mind can become absorbed in inquiry rather than being emotionally reactive. Now, the polar opposite of biased thinking is what the 18th century romantic poet John Keats called a negative capability. And that is, quote, when a man is capable of being in uncertainties, mysteries, doubts, without any irritable reaching after fact and reason. So, holding the mind open longer and longer allows more of reality to be included. It allows for new connections in our brain, for new insights. And this contemplative turn of mind is the ultimate in objectivity, as we search for the deeper truths that sit under an often confusing world. Now, another doorway to this mental curiosity is the experience of social safety and connection. Lots of studies have shown that when we feel socially supported and connected, our thinking becomes more open, more strategic, and more innovative. These studies reveal that the release of the hormone oxytocin brings about many of these deep physiological and psychological shifts. So, we should share our uncertainties and vulnerabilities with trusted others to help relax and open our minds. Also, this openness of mind and heart can be developed directly with mindfulness practices. In Buddhist approaches, a fundamental goal is the development of equanimity, which is a kind of general okayness with whatever reality is dishing up to us. Neither pushing away the unpleasant nor clinging to the pleasant. Equanimity is developed by curious attention to experience, allowing it to unfold and reveal itself. It's the opposite of the kind of emotional reactivity so characteristic of our polarised times. One can only guess what life was like for our distant forebears on the African savannah, but I can imagine that after their hunger was sated, they would have had plenty of time to sit together contemplating and discussing the beauty and the mysteries of nature. Our human history as a whole attests to the creative outcomes of this. So, considering again that talk in New York, maybe those few creative workers who raised their hands were onto something after all. It is quite likely they had learned that impasse demonstrates not the insufficiency but the creative intelligence of their minds and signals the need for curious, patient contemplation. Perhaps they had discovered that uncertainty is not the enemy, but a doorway to openness and creative thought.